So now that we can add photos, let's add the functionality to delete a photo. And we'll start in our photo accessor, and we'll add the logic so that we can delete a photo from Cloudinary. That's our goal in this particular class, is just to delete the photo from Cloudinary and return the results to what will be our application handler. And what we want to do here is we need to provide Cloudinary's delete method some deletion parameters. So I'm going to say var delete params equals new deletion params, and all we want to pass in here is the public ID. Then we'll say var results equals cloudinary.destroy, and then we'll pass in the delete params. And destroy sounds quite extreme, but it really is just going to delete our image from Cloudinary. And then what we want to do is return the results. And our results that we get back from a destroy method is going to give us a string that says OK, or it won't. So what we'll do is we'll set the results, and if it is OK, then we'll add a ternary operator and we'll say results.results. And if it's not OK, then we'll just return null. And we'll check for null to see if we get an error deleting the photo. And what we want to do then is go into our application and photos folder, and we'll create a new C# class, and rather excitingly we'll just call it delete. And this is just going to be a normal handler, so normal command handler, and we'll go through the laborious process of bringing in all of the things that we need. And system threading.task and system.threading, and also system for the exception. Hopefully one day they'll provide an option to bring in all of the dependencies when we use a snippet like this to save doing it one at a time. But that day hasn't come yet. And what we want to do in here is we want to provide the string of the ID, so we'll have a prop that's a string of the ID of the image. And what we also want to do is bring in our user accessor, so iUser accessor, and call it user accessor, and also the iPhoto accessor, and call it photo accessor. And we'll just bring in the application interfaces, and then we'll just initialize our fields from parameter. And I'll just remove list dots from both of these as well. Okay, and let's see what we need to do inside our logic here. First thing we want to do is get a reference to our user. So we'll say user equals await context dot users dot single or default async, and just as per normal we'll bring in entity framework core, and then we'll just add the expression and say x dot username is equal to user accessor dot get current username. And once we've got the user, what we can do is access the user's photos collection and see if we've got a photo that's matching the ID that we're passing in here. So we'll say var photo is equal to user.photos dot first or default, and we'll specify x goes to x.id equal to request.id. And then what we want to do, we want to check to see if the photo is null. So we'll say if the photo is null, then we're going to throw a new REST exception, and we'll need to bring in application errors, and we'll say HTTP status code, and we'll also need to bring in system.net, and we'll say not found for this, and we'll specify new, and we'll say photo equals and not found. And since we're only checking for the photo inside the users collection, this means that if a user's trying to delete a photo that's in our photos table in our database but belongs to a different user, we'll still get this not found if they were attempting to use a different user's photo. But we'll test this functionality anyway. What we also want to do is check to see if the photo is the main photo, and we're not going to allow users to delete their main photo. They'll have to use another route to delete that one, but we will be giving them the option to set a different photo as their main photo, so they could always change that if they wanted to. So what we'll do, we'll check to see if the photo is the main photo, and if it is, then we're going to throw a new REST exception and http status code.bad request, and then we'll say new and say photo equals you cannot delete your main photo. And if we get this far, then we'll actually go to our photo accessor and delete the photo from Cloudinary. So what we'll do, we'll say var results equals photo accessor dot delete photo, and we'll pass in the photo dot ID. And then what we'll do, we'll check the result, and if the result is equal to null, then we'll just throw a new, and in this case we'll just use a normal exception, and we'll just say problem deleting the photo. And if we get this far, then what we can do is say user.photos.remove and pass in the photo, and then the rest of it stays the same. The success message, or the variable for success, will have a number based on a number of changes that are being made, and then we return the unit.value. And then what we can do is head over to our photos controller, and we can add an http delete, and we'll say public async task of action results, and this time we're just returning units, as in we're not really returning anything, and we'll call this method deletes, and we also need the ID of the photo in here as well, so we'll specify the ID as a parameter, and we'll pass in the string of ID, and we also need to bring a mediator into this as well, so let's bring that in. And then what we can do is say return await mediator dot send, and then we'll say new deletes dot command, and then we'll pass in the ID equal to the ID. And with all of this in place, we can now go and take a look and make sure that we can actually delete a photo from our user's photo collection. So let's go back to Postman, and we've got the option here for deleting a photo, but let's go and take a look at one of our earlier requests. And in fact, what we'll do here, just so that we can get a reference to a photo, I'm just going to send up a new request with the same image to Cloudinary. And what we should get is an image with an ID, and then I can copy this into my clipboard and make sure that we can delete this particular photo. And in fact, because we want to test this in Cloudinary, let's go back to Cloudinary, to the dashboard, and I want to pick a photo that's easy to recognize, and all of these look very much the same. So I'm just going to upload a different photo that's going to be easy to tell if it's deleting okay, and I'll pick this very old version of Batman, and I'll send this up to Cloudinary. And just make sure that that's saved inside here. And it is. And if I go back and copy this ID into my clipboard and click on a delete photo request, and I'll just change the ID to the one that I've got in my clipboard and click send, and we get the 200 OK. And if I go back to Cloudinary, then we should find that that image has now been removed, and it has been. And let's just try one more request. I'm just going to add a photo as Bob. And what I also want to do is just log in as Tom. So I'm just going to find one of the earlier requests and just log in as Tom and save this token and click send. And now this is going to save the token as Tom_token. And what I want to do is just go back to the module 16 requests to the delete photo. In fact, I'm just going to get the ID of the photo we've just uploaded. Go back to the delete photo and change the ID, and also change the header for the authorization. And instead of token, I'm just going to swap this for Tom_token so that we try and delete Bob's photo as Tom. And what I'll do is I'll just click send, and what we do is get the 404 not found. And if I change this back to Bob and just put in a normal token and click send, then we get the 200 OK. Perfect.